No, no.
Hey everybody, this is Juli Pitra, and it's again Thursday night, time for my Thursday talks about Pitranomics, my 10-part strategy to grow, protect, and transfer wealth. A little bit of a change I've made is to tell everybody a little bit about myself if you haven't heard. I'm originally from Colorado Springs, Colorado, and I have an undergraduate degree in nuclear engineering. And one of my friends just asked me the other day if I was the first Black female to get a nuclear engineering degree from my school. And I was like, I have no idea. So I put that question in, we'll figure that out. I also have an MBA. It was where I was attending grad school that I met my husband, Andre, and I have 2 kids with him. We've been married 27 years. Most of it has been extremely happy. Our kids are 23 and 21. So they're out of the nest, and we have done our best to raise them to be productive, sane, and independent members of society. So Pitranomics is the culmination of what my husband and I have been working toward. I learned a lot about financial literacy and money from my mom, and her name was Jacqueline Tucker, beautiful woman, gone too soon. And I'm very grateful for the lessons that I got from her. And then when I married my husband, the Czech man, growing up in a former communist country, he and his family learned a lot of things that we don't necessarily learn or adapt to here. And so combination of that is now what we call Pitranomics, Pitra economics. And it's the strategy to grow, protect, and transfer wealth, as long as you are comfortable with what wealth is and your definition is. Big thing about Pitranomics, everybody has to decide what it is they're living their lives for, what are their goals, and therefore success in those goals is wealth. And so it's going to be a little different for everybody. And we have a guest speaker today. His name is Jed Walker. I met him on a transaction. He is a realtor and appraiser, which I think is pretty awesome. So we're going to be asking him some questions and his opinions about things that I think will be just really, really worthwhile, because our topic is going to be about maintaining the value in your home. So for most Americans, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit distracted because I'm trying to make this presentation work and it is not. Okay, every time there's some kind of technological problem, so I just try to roll with it. This one is, I have no idea how to get this presentation to present mode. So this will be fun. But anyway, for most Americans, their biggest sources of wealth is in their personal home. And a lot of people get it wrong. What they do is they either don't maintain it the way that they need to preserve the wealth, or they do these upgrades that don't actually add value. And so they've lost money in that process and decreased their wealth. Okay, let me find out one thing. I don't know why it's not showing. Shamir, have no idea. So we'll just keep talking until then. Can you do me a favor and spotlight Jed? I can look at my presentation here. So anyway, there are 10 strategies in Pitranomics. And the one we're talking about today is to build your fortress, to make sure. Oh, thank you. Ooh, look at that. She's a savior. To make sure that the asset that you put most of your money in, you're protecting the value of that asset. And so if we go to the next page, thank you, Shamir. There are the 10 strategies. And we always start with the assessment, which is what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish in life? And these aren't like short-term goals. They're life goals. I define these goals as end-of-life goals. Those are the things that if you don't accomplish them, you will feel that your life has been without purpose, which is why they're pretty important. And once you decide what your goals are, you're going to have an assessment of what resources you have available of money, energy, and time to accomplish those goals. So that's the first big step. Now, the one we're going to talk about today, if you scroll down to the next page, please, you'll see that that strategy is build your fortress. And what you want to do when you're growing your wealth and building your wealth, you want to protect it from any possible assailants. And that is why protecting the value in your house is an important part of protecting your fortress or building your fortress for your wealth. Next one, please, if you don't mind. Thank you. So this is Jedediah Jed Walker that we have on. Thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. So the reason why his opinion is important, because he not only sells and buys houses for people, but he determines their value. And so please feel free to jump in with questions, ask questions, because this is a really important topic. I can't tell you how many homes I've been into where somebody will say, oh, we improved this home or we upgraded the home and it's completely remodeled. And I'm like, okay, whatever you say. In addition, Jed actually flipped a home, which means he bought a home that was in bad shape, made good renovations, and sold it to a client that was happy. That client happened to be one of mine, which is how we met. And I really respect that as a first flip, he knocked it out of the park.
Thank you, ma'am.
So that's really important to remember that when you're putting money into a property, value is supposed to ensue. A lot of times it doesn't. Next page, please, Shamir. All right, so let's talk about it. Most properties appreciate mainly due to increases in inflation. But what you'd like to do is to maximize your home value ahead of that and don't do what some people do to actually detract from the value. By the way, look at that big gold dollar. If you're not a dollar person and you're listening either on Facebook or Instagram, not Instagram, YouTube, I will be on Instagram soon. Then think about it. It's all about putting the value into your home that if you should need to sell it or if you should need to refinance it, you can get it out. Next page, please. All right, so what are the sources of wealth in your home? You can increase resale value, or the value of it can be an improvement in your net worth. It's a transfer of wealth because you pass the property on to the next generation. And of late, people have been taking advantage of revenue generation in their home. So there's Airbnb, there's house hacking, there's all kinds of things to help you build wealth in your home, but you have to take care of the asset. So Jed, before we go further, do you have any thoughts about maybe some real things you've seen that someone's done that's detracted from the value rather than added to the value?
Yes, as far as just straight up detracting from the value, it's I've been in thousands and thousands of homes, and it's very obvious to me when someone has tried to remodel their house and they don't know what they're doing.
Okay.
So not only did they not add to the value of their home by trying to do the work themselves, they straight up did detract value, when it probably would have been better off just leaving it the way it was. Um, Now, that's not to say that I've seen a lot of good work that someone has done themselves, but you need to know what you are capable of when you start undertaking a remodel. And if you're not any good at painting or texturing or flooring or anything like that, then you need to stop where you're at and, hire a professional or leave it where it's at. The next thing that I've seen that may not necessarily detract, but it's more of a waste of money and sort of a net, negative is when they put in finishes or features and, when they're doing their remodel that are not as nice or like the basic cheapest materials they think they can get away with. Um, and even on lower end homes, that's not really something you want to do. It's worth it just to pay a little bit more and get the stuff that's going to last. That cheap laminate flooring has been one that we've seen a lot of because that stuff, as soon as you get any kind of moisture on it, it just absorbs it and it starts to, peel up and curl up and it's already needing to be replaced after, less than 5 years.
No, I totally agree. I completely agree with that. Um, go to the next page, please. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is maintaining your asset. And there are 5 things, I call them the big 5. And a lot of times when people do flips, they don't even investigate these big 5s, but they are crucial money draining aspects of the properties. Not every appraiser, and I'll get your opinion about this, Jed, tries to value whether or not these things have been kept up. I've met some that gave absolutely no value to that. But here's the issue. You won't be able to sell the home well without attending to these things, or you'll have an unhappy home buyer. And in this litigious world, it could be something pretty important. So the foundation, and especially here in Texas, we have this really expansive clay. You have to control the moisture of your foundation. A lot of people don't think about that, but that clay expands and contracts. And things like wood beams or or brick or anything like that, it doesn't like it when it goes through this cycle of expansion and contraction. And what I really like about this example, I've seen worse, but this example, you can see that the brick itself has been broken, not just breaking along mortar lines. That's some pretty serious cycles of contraction and expansion. And chances are you have seen some really serious problems inside the house as a result of it. Next slide, please. The next one is the plumbing. Now, I buy a lot of older homes which have decaying, maybe cast iron or any kind of other problems with it. When you do any kind of major work on a house, most of the times you're going to be doing something with the wet areas. So make sure you have that licensed, reputable, competent plumber, something just moved, competent plumber to come in and do that work. Don't ignore it and make sure you hire somebody well-versed in dealing with the products that you have. So if it's somebody that's, say, a brand new plumber, they might not know what to do with some of that old cast iron. I have actually seen, and it's been on one of my houses, where they did not replace it all. They were like, oh, this is good enough. No, when I say replace it, replace all of it. All of it. The freshwater line, the sewer line, everything in the house. I want it all done. Next slide, please. The roof. A lot of people, since it's not something that you look at every day, you look up, it's there, you don't get to see how important the roof is for the value of the house. One thing I really like about this picture, you can have a slow leak in your roof, and it's just busy doing dribbling work all throughout the rafters, through the insulation. That moisture attracts vermin. Then you have moisture that seeps through the drywall that's been put up on your ceiling, and then you might have mold issues. And in this case, you have moisture issues around an electrical item. That's another problem. So stay on top of that in your own home. And if you're going to make any major upgrades to your home, address these issues. Next slide, please. The HVAC. Now, of these 5 items, I personally think the HVAC is, it's maintenance. It's expensive, don't get me wrong. We moved into a house that had 3 zones. And within, I think, 6 months, all 3 had gone out. So 3 4-ton, 1 5-ton, those were expensive. And especially when you don't expect it. Common things that people don't do in order to maintain their HVAC is they don't change their filter often enough. And I'm guilty of it too. Let me just say, I don't always change it as much as I should. My thing is, if you pull the filter out and it looks that filthy, you should be changing it out more. Another thing they do, or don't do, they don't clean their condenser up, and it's as good at exchanging heat as it should. It wears the component out, and then you're wondering, why didn't it last as long as it should? And then the last one is electrical. And that's not just a value issue, that is a safety hazard. So the house that I moved into, that I still live in, that had the 3 zones that needed to be replaced, and like I said, quite expensive. We also had a fire behind the microwave. I was using the microwave one night, and I was like, no. There was a fire going on behind the microwave. What had happened, and the house had been, you know, created by a good builder, but maybe during a bad time of trades. But the little wires that go on the receptacles weren't completely seated. And so it arced across there, and it was a strong fire. I was kind of afraid. My kids were in the room. So I hired an electrician to go through and check every receptacle in my house and make sure that the wires were properly seated and they were properly installed. Electrical problems are no joke. So these are the big 5. Jed, what's your opinion about the big 5? And do you think there's something else too?
So first off, thank you for reminding me to change my AC filter. Um, yeah, that definitely needs to be done. But one thing I would add, just kind of in the realm of when you're doing a home remodel,
Mhm.
you need to always start with the foundation. Because if you go through and, start changing out old paneling to drywall or doing this, that, or the other,
Mhm.
and you go and do the foundation, you're going to have to go back and redo it because shifting the foundation back after putting in piers or even on a pier and beam home, leveling out some, it's going to shift everything. And so you need to do your foundation first so that once everything does shift, you know where it's going to be leveled out at, and then you can move forward from there. But other than that, those are the main things. And I'll also add that these are unfortunately some of the main things that are going to be the more expensive, and they'll not necessarily add the value you're hoping for, but they lay the foundation for the things that do add value. So it's not necessarily that, having a new roof adds value, it's that having a bad roof detracts value.
Well
And it's
said.
not that having new plumbing adds value, having bad plumbing will take away value. So having all these things in good order and in good shape are kind of the baseline for where you need to start from.
I completely agree with that. One of the worst foundation disruptions I've seen, it was a house in Plano, which isn't the area of the Dallas-Fort Worth that has the biggest problems, but this house, literally, the foundation looked like this. It looked like an earthquake fault. And you could see behind the flooring into the ground below. And of course, the whole house exterior was tilted. And by the way, I buy homes to renovate and either rent or sell, mostly to rent out. And the wholesaler, the person who was selling the house, was said, "Oh, it's a minor foundation fix." I was like, "But it's 2 different pieces now. That's not a minor fix to me." So what Jed said is exactly right. You may not see an improvement in the value of the home if you don't fix these major items, but your home might be unsellable and definitely valued less if you don't. So next slide, please. And by the way, thank you so much for doing this. This is for me. Okay. One of the issues to consider about valuation is something called functional obsolescence. And what that is in real estate, it refers to a loss of value in a property caused by outdated or undesirable layouts. So a lot of times people will get these new or these old homes and they'll completely change the layout because the layout of the old house is not consistent with how people want to live today. So maybe they want two bathrooms instead of one. So you have to find the space. And there are a lot of people, say my age, right, who grew up in a home with lots of people and one bathroom. And so you had to share or wait in line or develop a system. We don't really think about that today. We think about there always being a surplus of bathrooms if there are more than, say, people in the house. But that hasn't always been the case. I used to own a home that had 5 bedrooms and 1 bath. That's a lot. Much older home, but another part of that is inefficient technologies. The first one that I can think about is we use a lot more electricity in the house than we used to. And where we use it, we have TVs, we have maybe more than one refrigerator, we have more than one oven, we have microwaves, maybe we have a refrigerator plus another refrigerator. We have these huge washers and dryers. We have so much stuff. Like as right now, I have 4 lights, a computer, my microphone, my iPad, and my phone all plugged up. Plus my misting thing. What is it called? The humidifier. It's all going right here. And that's just this little corner where I happen to be right now. So think about how technology has advanced and the impact on the house or the property that you want to live in or work in or sell. It's got to keep up if it's going to still be a property of value. And then the biggest thing is you don't tend to your deferred maintenance. You don't make sure your plumbing is kept up with. You don't make sure you maintain your HVAC. One of the things about not maintaining your HVAC properly is that your ducts get really dirty. Now, you can't just replace those ducts and slide some more in. You're pretty much messing up your house to put in new ductwork. So one of the best things is to take care of it. Keep those ducts clean. Keep your house dry. Don't let it be a big moisture pool. If you have an issue, if it looks like you have lower water pressure, check to see if you have a leak. Might not be a leak, but check to see what the issue is. Always stay on top of the maintenance of your house. You know, I used to have a link, I might see if I can find it, of a system to always check the maintenance of your house. Walk your house to check your foundation, change your HVAC, go up in your attic once in a while, and you will see, for example, if you have a bunch of vermin in there, that does detract from the value if you have vermin in your house. So those are the things that I look for in functional obsolescence. Jed, would you like to kind of add to that?
Sure. I'll add a couple things. First one is I want to add that I also see a lot of functional obsolescence, not just in old homes, but I see it in new homes. People that will build a house that is exactly what they want, but it's not what anyone else wants. The one I just recently got finished with was a very nice, well built, very well designed 1 bedroom house. And unfortunately, there's not much of a market for a 1 bedroom house. And you really have to think of these things if you are considering value for the long term, is that you not only have to build and design what you want, you have to build and design what the market is going to want as well. So a flip side of that is it's okay to pay extra to get the things you want in your home, but you need to understand that you're doing it for your own peace of mind, not necessarily to maximize value. Um, and like you said, also the inefficient technologies, I would wager that some of the things that people put in their homes that are especially electronic based, that are at the time considered built in, they do not age well at all. Built in surround sound systems, built in intercom systems, if you're from the 70s, or built in anything, don't do it. Especially electronic based, they will not age well. I mean, they come out with a new iPhone, what, every year or so?
Yeah,
And the technology just moves a lot quicker than you think it does. Now, for surround sound stuff, if you have the wiring, that's one thing. But if you're going to try to, have the built-in speakers in the ceiling or anything like that, you just need to understand that that's going to age and eventually it's going to be obsolete pretty quickly, more than likely.
exactly. I agree. And as well, like for example, a lot of AV equipment is moving toward the Cat 6 cabling rather than the Cat 5. And Cat 5 has been the standard, I want to say 15, 20 years, something like that. And now
Hmm.
we're moving on to something called Cat 6. Does most stuff work that you buy work fine on Cat 5? Of course it does. Um, but we are moving to a new standard. So keep up. I did a pool. I built a pool in my house 10 years ago. Yeah, I think 10 years ago. Yes, it was because it was right before I turned 50 and now I'm about to turn 60. And I put in this wonderful system and I got some great advice. And he says, make sure you can change out the equipment. So I have speakers and I don't think they work. I don't use the speakers very much because I'm listening to my own stuff now. But if I were, I could just take that cabling because it was the most recent cabling they had, and I could put in a new speaker. And that's great. I have plugs where they're supposed to. I can have a TV on my porch and a TV on the pavilion. I can change out the speakers for the sound in the backyard. Now, was that necessary? Absolutely not. It was not necessary. You know what happened? I went way over budget on my pool build. However, I think it has lasted well. And if I were to sell the house tomorrow, I think a lot of what I put in would still be considered valuable. But we have to remember it's not one to one. You don't put $10 in and get $10 out. Not usually. Sometimes you do, but most of the time, we want to make sure you like it, you love it, and it still maintains value or enhances the sale of your home on the back end. Next slide, please. By the way, that definition came from the website, the CE Shop. So this picture, if we could look at it, I can't use my mouse, which I had planned to do. So this is, I think, a great description of functional obsolescence being addressed. The biggest parts you can change are those items of functional obsolescence that are curable. So in this picture, you see they go to a more open layout, which is considered more desirable. They've added a whole bunch of light. More people want that greater light because you can see there weren't that many light fixtures there, which is awesome. This is what adds to the house. Sometimes in remodeling the kitchen, you want to put in, and I don't see it here, you want to put in maybe a double oven. Many of the houses that I remodel don't have dishwashers or microwaves, and I pretty much always try to put those in if I can, if it's at all possible. So those are curable items of functional obsolescence that you can address. There are also incurable items of functional obsolescence. As you can tell, this looks like a high rise, but let's say the area that the high rise is in has become a very undesirable area. You can't cure that with what you do. You have to be mindful of the top value of the property given its environment and then improve accordingly. And then what this also could be is an example of super adequacy. So let's say you have a lovely condo and you buy it for 50, but the top value it will ever be is 100,000. And then you're like, I'm just going to blow this out and put $150,000 of improvement in it. And believe it or not, I have seen that over improvement so many times. And the super adequacy just means you're putting money into the property that doesn't result in any kind of a corresponding increase in value. So that's also an unfortunate misstep right there. Jed, what are your thoughts on that?
So I want to go back to your what you said in your last slide for the super adequacy when you talked about your swimming pool.
Mm-hmm.
That's always been the classic example of things that always cost more to put in than what they add. Um, I think the last time I checked on just an average swimming pool for a saltwater swimming pool in ground is about what 75 to 85,000, and if you want a spa, it's 95 to 100,000, and that's starting. And when we make adjustments, and it's market dependent on different levels of homes, but it's not $100,000 adjustment between a house that has a pool versus a comparable home that does not have a pool. You're paying to get what you want. The other example I always give people is no one cares if you have a solid gold front door. You could pay $1 million for a solid gold front door, and that's your pride and joy, but it's not adding $1 million value to your house. Um, Same thing with a lot of things that people care a lot about. Another classic one that people always get mad at me about is because, they pay $30,000 to put a putting green in their backyard. Well, the market doesn't care that you put a putting green in your backyard. That's not me. That's me telling you what the market says. And that's, you putting in something for your own pleasure. But remember, you're not getting that value out.
Exactly. And one of the things, if you can go to the next slide, please, Shamir, it is best if you're not the type of person that does improvements for a living, that you seek some resources. So this is how to maximize your investment, okay? Consult with knowledgeable realtors, architects, contractors, and appraisers. Someone who can help walk you through what the appraisal process is for that buyer in, you put mind in the right concept for what can I do to the house that makes it valuable to the next person that has to buy it. And if you don't care, if you're planning to die in the house, then of course you don't have to worry about that. But the average statistic is that people trade homes 5 to 7 years. And I've been in my home 15 years, something like that. So there are some people that are switching even more often to make that the average. Knowledgeable realtors can also help you understand market trends and values. So in the neighborhood where I live, in the particular village, it is a big advantage to have a pool. One, because it's such a pain in the butt to get it done with the city, all your permits, and getting it through the HOA. So if there are specific market conditions that make it advantageous to make that improvement, because it is so difficult to get it done, not just the cost to get it done, but just the time and all that, then that's something that is good to know. In a knowledgeable area realtor will know that. Too many people try to make structural changes, like major structural changes in their houses, without using an architect. And while I feel comfortable getting a structural engineer for maybe removing a wall and putting up a beam, and I'm going to do a major remodel, I'm getting somebody that's a reputable architect, because that way the architect's there, the engineer comes in, all of that stuff comes up with plans. If I'm doing an expensive remodel, I want to give something to somebody so I can get some quotes. Unless I've got a contractor I already like, then I don't. I'm just saying, hey, this is what I want to pay you. Let's now dicker. And I think I can speak firsthand. A bad contractor will cost you so much in time and money. Get a good recommendation. Ask several people. Go look at their work. Get some other people to go look at their work. The amount of money you spend in improving a home these days, you don't want to go wrong with picking someone that can't do the job. But no judgment if you do, because I still sometimes pick wrong. You try somebody new and they just don't work out. But sometimes the old tried and true, they aren't around anymore. So you're constantly trying new people. The other thing you want to do is use construction industry best practices by reputable and bonded contractors. There are those contractors that will come in and say, you don't need permits, you don't need to change out this, you don't need to use this type of material, you don't need an engineer. And then you have a home that you can't sell because it's not been permitted, it's not been approved by an engineer. And I'm sure you've seen this, Jed, a lot of homes that just, their improvements don't add value, and in fact have to be torn out to bring the house of value because they've not been done by reputable and bonded contractors.
Exactly. It happens all the time.
Happens all the time. And even when you know someone, say you know someone like Jed, and you're like, well, I didn't want to bother you. Hey, bother him. Pay that guy if you need to. Get him over to come to your house and look, and let his expertise walk you through what you need to do in your house. Because here's the thing that just frightens me so much. Most Americans, their biggest financial asset is their house. And if they don't keep that up, that is a big hit to their wealth generating activities. So these are tips. Just don't just jump in willy-nilly and make an improvement. Even if you think you can, check with somebody else and get an opinion. And then, of course, if you're living in the house, you have to balance how you want to live in the house with maximizing value. It can't be 100% about maximizing value, but that should always be in the back of your mind. So I'm trying to think. I have seen, let's go back to the house that I live in now. When we moved in, they had painted the office like a cranberry pink. It was a designer color. They were proud of it. It was pink on the walls, pink on the ceiling, pink on the built-ins. And I saw the picture. I was like, yeah, I can get past that. So I was looking at the yard. And I remember my husband was like, what's up with this pink? I said, yeah, we can get past that. That's no problem. But I have a feeling that horrible pink was one of the reasons it sat on the market so long and became a valuable a deal for us because we got a deal. How would it have been if they had listened to their realtor and made the house more neutral and taken off some of these very strange choices that they had made? They probably would have made 20% more. I talked to that realtor. We still speak now and again. And she was like, some people just don't listen. Don't be one of those people. Listen to the people that can give you great advice. Please, please, please. Now I added this next one, develop a sound budget and stick with it. I find that more easily possible in the investor side of my business, but I always go over budget on my personal one. I told you about the pool. I actually I went double over my original budget. My husband was really happy about that. And so almost anything I've done in that house has been more than what I had intended it to be because I'll see it and I'll be like, oh, we need this, we need that. That's because the emotions come into play. I would say let's go for planning, which is one of the reasons I'm consulting with an architect now as I'm thinking about remodeling my house. I'm getting all of the emotions out. I want this, I want that, I want that. And then he says, this is going to cost you this, going to cost you that. This is going to be difficult. And I can say, oh, maybe I won't get all of that right now. And that's why it's taken me probably 8 years to even think about being ready to remodel my house because I want everything. I want it to be perfect. But I don't want to pay for it, not all of that. So I have to prioritize. And the last thing I cannot stress is if you start a project, a big remodel, please be prepared to sell it. Don't leave it incomplete. I just saw this house. I was actually trying to get it, buy it myself so I could wholesale it to someone else. Somebody had bought a house. They got all these plans. They did it right. And they were putting in probably about $200,000 in this house. And they had spent most of that money already. They bought a house for like $340,000. And that house sold for $425,000. They made a lot of mistakes in the execution, but they also divorced in the middle of remodel and couldn't come together long enough to finish the project. And so they lost their money. And I myself have lost money on incomplete projects because the partners I was engaged in, we couldn't get along anymore. We couldn't finish the project and the loss was taken. So avoid selling an incomplete project. You will lose your shirt. Nobody's going to pay for your half done work. They don't know what they have to go over. It's a big risk to do it. So in order for them to take that risk, they discount the price. So complete the project. Complete it well. Next slide, please, if we have another one. All right, so that's the presentation part. I'd like to get to the questions and answers. If we can take off the screen share, please. Thank you so much for coming in and saving me with the presentation. So while we're here, does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask about this topic? You know, I really want you to take advantage because this is a time to get some into what you should get started.
Julie,
Yes.
I don't have a question per se, but I did want to add something from your info that you had on the last slide.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really to kind of tell people that they don't necessarily have to go about a full remodel when it comes time to sell a home, especially if they've lived in a home for a long, long time or they're getting ready to sell grandma's house. There's
Mm-hmm.
no real need to do a full remodel. and you need to understand what y'all are capable of. If it's you and like your, siblings getting ready to sell your parents' home, um, I think that what I always have told people is to start, just fix what's broken. And more often than not, that's plenty. If you just fix what's broken, then outside of that, there's really, not a whole lot you can do unless the home is just really, really in bad shape. Um, I just sold a house from the early 70s, and believe it or not, the mustard yellow countertops, the puke green bathrooms, and the hot pink bathroom was a big selling point for the lady that ended up buying it. There's a lot of people, especially those old features and characteristics that they don't replicate anymore. It's a lot of people that seek that stuff out. And I also see a lot of people make the mistake when they get into historic home restorations, which don't do that, by the way, money pits, all of them.
Money pits. Yeah.
Um, but they start painting over that beautiful finished, hardwood that's all throughout like staircases, all up through across the walls, all the woodwork. People look for that stuff specifically. And if you're unlucky enough to try to remodel like a Victorian or something along those lines, and I just say that because they're money pits. I mean, 100-year-old plus house, there's a lot, and you will lose all your money real quick. And the bigger they are, I mean, this not a good idea. Don't do that. Um, but really, I start with telling people just fix what's broken. And if you need to, just do paint and lighting. And outside of that, remodeling is just for your own personal taste because the cost to remodel a kitchen more than likely isn't necessarily worth it. You can update countertops, but people think that they have to like gut the kitchen, gut the bathroom. No, you don't. It's really not going to add that much value. And you also save time. Um, and as you and I both know, your time is valuable. And if all you have to do is just fix what's broken and then get it on the market, then by all means, go for it.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I have or had a next door neighbor and they did a whole lot of work to their house to sell it and ended up taking a little bit of a hit on the price. And the new owner came in and took out everything they put in, all
Exactly. And
that
it's for
new
reasons
stuff
like
they
that
put in.
why I tell people is because a lot of people do plan on making changes like that when they buy a home. So as long as you just fix what's broken and give people kind of a blank slate to work with and just either keep things as the same as they are or be as neutral as possible, because the new buyers are going to come in and, change things anyway.
Right. Unless you are renovating a complete wreck of a house, and
Right.
please don't do
Yeah.
it unless you have the experience,
Right.
then
And
just
that's mainly for investors to kind of think of. But for regular homeowners, if you're wanting to just keep as much value in your home as possible, maintain it and fix what's broken. And that's if you don't remember anything else from tonight, if you just remember that, you'll be just fine.
now I just want to say, yes, maintain it and fix what's broken, unless you're the husband of a wife that will be absolutely crazed if she doesn't get the improvements that she wants. I'm just gonna put that caveat out there. Okay. So we
Yeah.
have some
Okay.
questions in
Happy wife, happy
there.
life. Yeah. You got to remember that. But a
So
happy
let's put
wife is
those.
priceless. So what is money when
Let's
it
make
comes to
sure you
that?
stay happily married if you are.
Yes.
Okay.
Because like you said, I have unfortunately done appraisals for estate. We do a lot of appraisals for attorneys, and a lot of homes are halfway remodeled.
Yep.
My wife and I made it through a remodel, thank goodness.
And
But
stay married. Well done.
yeah, we stayed married the whole time. But I we're not doing that again. And it's one thing if it's a house that you're not living in, but when you're trying to live through a remodel, that is a nightmare. And
And
don't do
yes, it
that.
is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I'm actually contemplating one now. And I know my husband looks at me, he's like, there's nothing wrong with the house. I'm like, there is nothing wrong with the house. But if we're going to stay in it, as long as we're on this earthly coil, there are things that I would like to see. And hopefully we'll do that and still last well. Let me go to a question from Joel, and thank you for this question. This is a great one. Do you think solar panels add or detract from the value of a home? I'll let you go first on that one.
Okay, so it depends on if they're financed or not. It's not
Yep.
so much the solar panels themselves, it's that solar panel salesmen, unfortunately, are the new used car salesmen. I have seen homes with packages financed at $100,000 at 12% interest rate, and it's not good. Um, it should not cost you $100,000 to get a solar panel package unless you're on a very large estate or a commercial property. Um, so the area where I'm at, they don't add value. They don't add what they cost, unfortunately. That is more of a long-term for yourself type deal that will save you money in the long run. But if you're just looking to maximize value for the now, it's not worth it. The market has not yet noticed the value of solar panels, and especially because they are an additional liability for your insurance company as well.
Yes, thank you.
Like just today, we've got a lot of golf ball size and softball size hail all over, and I don't know if y'all heard the rain earlier, but
I
that's
did, yeah.
thankfully we weren't in hail, but there's a lot of it, and it will wreck your solar panels as well.
I'm going to wait on that until that seems to be more impervious to the elements and has become a little cheaper to install. I'm going to wait on that.
Mhm.
Like you said, some of these solar packages can be $100,000. I don't think I have $100,000 worth of energy savings left in my life. So no,
Right.
I'm not going
And
to do
yeah,
it.
you just need to pay cash for them, shop around for them, and
Yep.
really invest in it if you plan on staying in your home at least 10 to 20 years, because that's where you'll see the return on your investment there is in the long run with
In the long
not
run.
having to pay for your electric bills.
Okay. Let me see. I got to put my glasses on to read this one. Okay. Jacine, I agree with the don't get homes that are designated historical. There are too many hoops to go through, and not only that, that takes time. I'm dealing with the historical home now. I am so sorry. If you had asked me, I would have said, don't buy that. Not to renovate and flip. I don't know if it's for your personal use. For your personal use with a good contractor, patience, and a lot of money that you don't mind blowing, that you might not get back, then maybe that's a good choice. I have seen a couple of homes where I'm like, oh, I'd love to remodel that, but it's in a historical district, and I've been burned by that once because the people who are on the historical district committee do not care how long it takes or how much money it takes for you to get that better. And since it's already hard to get permits and things done, if you're doing a really big flip, because they're going to go in and want you to do other things, of course, why would you add the added complexity of dealing with the historical committee? And they know nothing about construction. That's weird. How can they know nothing about construction? So, and it's also difficult in an area that has an HOA, particularly if they want to oversee and approve all of the improvements in your HOA. And I live in an HOA, so it's going to be a fun fight when I decide to do what I want to do. Your thoughts on that, Jed?
Yeah, we don't have a lot of HOAs out here in the country. And this is for everyone watching. Primarily, I work in rural areas, though we do have some portions of where I cover that are, um, you know, basic suburb type developments. Um, but old homes are a labor of love.
Mm,
So don't ever go into them thinking that um, it's going to be a worthwhile investment unless you just really love old homes.
yeah,
And a lot of people have told me like, "Oh, I lived in a 100-year-old house and never had a problem with it." Oh, well, you just ignored those problems.
because they are
Um,
there. They are there.
yeah, they're there. Uh, they're always there. You just probably ignored them.
And you're like, yes, that door never closes, or that door always stays open, or what's that funny
Oh, it's
smell?
always been like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's always been like that. Yes, that's the.
Yeah.
What's the next question? What areas in DFW should be on the watch list for potential foundation issues? That is a great question. And here's the answer. Pretty much all of them, because you will
Mhm.
have pockets that are really, really bad next to a pocket that is fine. But as far as a general area, I would say Farmers Branch just has so many bad ones. Every home I've ever seen in that area, Farmers Branch and parts of Carrollton, lots of them. Um, there was a builder that came through and built a lot of homes in Dallas, Fox and Jacobs. Every single one of those homes, once they get to a certain age, have just egregious foundation issues. You have to put it in your budget. Um, and it's not like a couple of thousand, it's like 10 or sometimes 20 or even 30.
Mhm.
And I'm not talking because the cost of the piers are high. Let's say your piers are 225 to 250 and you're paying 30,000 for a remodel, sorry, for the foundation. My highest price, it was a house that was less than 1,000 square feet, and I spent almost 20,000 on new piers because that thing was 13 inches from center to edge. You could see it when you drove up. I was like, that house is
Yeah.
tilting quite egregiously. So, um, where I live, when I built my pool and they dug into getting the pool to dig out the hole, my contractor said, "Oh, this is pretty good. You have solid rock under there. Your pool's not going to move. But on the other hand, it's going to cost you 3 times as much for the digging out. But once there, it won't move." But less than a mile from us is a whole little pocket that has horrible, shifty foundation issues. Here's what you do. This is what you need to do, and I need to also do it myself. You need a good um, engineer that knows his soils and things like that, that can test your soils and tell you what you need to do. You will get any civil engineer that will go in there and tell you, I need to level the house, you need this many piers, blah, blah, blah. But you need someone who understands the soils, and then you will have a greater level of safety. Also, I don't think there's anything wrong with buying a house that's had foundation work. That proves they were paying attention and put something in there. I am more afraid of all of these new construction homes, particularly those built right before COVID. No, sorry, right before Snowmageddon. For those of you that remember Snowmageddon in Texas, and a lot of those houses had problems because the people who were building them didn't know how to account for the massive contraction and expansion. They didn't know, didn't care. I don't know who passed that from an engineering standpoint, but houses that have stood the test of time, I like those. I'm not as big a fan of the newer homes unless I feel like the builder can really speak to that. Oh, and another question. Why do builders build homes with no gutters? Will adding gutters increase the value? Okay, that's also a Wilda. That's a great question. Now, let me tell you, the purpose of gutters is to keep the water from pooling around the foundation and causing problems. You can solve that with other methods. So you can create a nice little French drain system around the property. Again, go back to the house that we bought. It happened to have been on a sunny day that we first saw the house, but we did see it when it was rainy, and there was an area that was pooled in the yard next to the retaining wall. So we invested in putting a French drain out to the street along the retaining wall to get rid of that water. Now, if your property has a roof with no gutters and there's a bunch of concrete surrounding it, and I know this because I happen to have done a flip like that, well, that water has nowhere to go. And what I ended up having to do, and this was on a flip, so added expense, was the French drain system around it to get that water away from the foundation, and it was pier and beam. So gutters wouldn't have helped. It would have the water a little bit, but it would have been on the foundation, sloped down. So it was cheaper to put in the French drains. And what a French drain is sort of like a little tunnel that has to be graded appropriately to make the water float away from wherever it is you want to float it away from. So what some engineers have told me is you don't need gutters, but you do need them designed to work with moving the water away from your foundation or away from areas where it can cause damage. Let's see. Question from Shantae. Is it Shantae? Thank you. It's SB. I don't know if there's another SB, but if it's Shantae, hey girl, what do you think about buying an existing mobile home to add to an investor's portfolio? What is the life cycle of a mobile home in Texas? I'm gonna let you, since you live in the country, Jed, take that one.
Oh boy. And I'll answer this one, but I'll go into a little more detail, but I will have to run after this one.
Okay.
Um, but no. That's the short answer. Don't buy mobile homes. Terrible investment. They're like cars. And when you think of mobile homes like cars, everything makes a lot more sense after that. Different models are better built than others. Different brands have different qualities to them. They age like cars. There's some companies are like Toyotas, some companies are like Kias, and they don't age very well. Um, and the second thing to that is mobile homes don't age very well at all. I've seen mobile homes that need to be torn down that are only from the early 2000s. But I have seen some from the, 70s that were very well maintained and, somebody's still living in it. But most of the time they will last about 20, 25 years, maybe 30 if you're lucky, and that's it. After that, they're just not built with very good quality at all.
No.
The framing is real thin. The type of wood they use is real lightweight. The, you know, they're just not very well built. And they are a great opportunity for someone to have a home if you have the land to put it on, that otherwise wouldn't be able to afford anything. But when you see the mobile homes that have seemingly appreciated in value, it's the land that
It's the
appreciated,
land.
not the mobile home.
Buy
So
that
to
mobile
answer
home
the
investment for
question,
the land.
right, for the land, or if you have a trailer park, go for it. But if you have a trailer park, then you probably already know that, you know, they're just not worth it. But yeah, it's terrible investment. Don't do it if you don't already know what you're doing.
Okay, and
Um,
I was just going to say there is a system to making money with buying mobile homes, but it's either a short portion of the long-term play or it's a long-term play. So if you're planning to buy it, fix it up enough, and owner finance that property, that seems to have been successful for some people. It's not what I know, but some people do it. Before I forget, Evan, you raised your hand, and he may have a question for you. So 2 more minutes, please. Evan,
sure.
unmute and ask your question, please.
Hey, how you doing? I'm sorry. Hold on.
You got two of you here.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
Hello, I can hear you.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
How about now?
Yep. Can you hear us?
Okay, got it. Okay, my question to you was, you was talking about the foundation. Buying houses, sometimes you have foundation problems, and I know I had a foundation problem on my property twice when I had two slab breaks, and not realizing that it was my foundation that kept shifting. Now, have you ever had to deal with something like that? How costly can it be?
You know what, Jed? I'll let you answer because I know you have to go, and then I will.
Right. So being here in North Texas and Northeast Texas, there's very few homes, especially those that were built before like the 2000s, that don't have foundation problems of some kind. They're just that common. My house has it. I've been in very few homes that are from the 90s or earlier that don't have it. It more than likely is due to your expansive soil. But other problems, before I get to the cost, other problems can be tree roots, um, rocks. There's an area where I live that has giant boulders in the soil, and those boulders over time will rise up and start messing with your foundation. Water leaks, if you're not aware of it, that'll drain out the soil from underneath, and that'll also start causing foundation problems. As to the cost, it depends on the company you go with, and go with a reputable one that offers a warranty, and a company that's been around a while so they can honor that warranty. Um, and they usually charge by the pier. So if you only have one side of your house that's been an issue, it's generally not going to be as bad as if someone, or if you have to go all the way around your house, because it'll generally start breaking like on the edges. And I've seen some homes that unfortunately were just not fixable. But those are the really bad ones, like what you mentioned earlier. I've seen homes where I can stick my hand through the crack in the foundation, and I've actually seen that a couple times. And especially if that crack is down the middle of the house and the house is basically just broken in half, you can adjust it, but it'll never be truly fixed. Um, so it depends, and most companies will also give you free quotes as well. They will come, and especially if they're honest, a house company came out to my house and said, yeah, you've got a inch and a half of movement over here, but really it's not enough to where we can fix it yet. So they may still give you a quote, but they'll also tell you if what the work they're going to do is actually going to fix it. So call around to a couple companies, at least two that have been around a while and have good reviews, and let them do their thing and let them tell you what their recommendations are and why they recommend it as well.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
No
I
problem,
know
sir.
you have to go. Thank you for joining us. For those that want to
Yeah,
stay,
no
I'll keep
problem.
taking these questions. We will put on Facebook his information if you'd like to reach out, and we'll put it again up here before we leave on Zoom. So thank you
Yes,
so much
ma'am.
for
And
joining
thank you
us.
again.
Take care.
Yes, thank you for having me.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So I'd like to add to the foundation issue. Most, not all, most foundation companies come in and they measure, and from the difference in measurement, they try to come up with a plan on how to level it. In a great many cases, there are reasons why a level foundation became unlevel. So you might want to have somebody that can help you understand why it became unlevel in the first place. And so it could be the soil, it could be a leak, what Jed mentioned about the rocks, but trees are very damaging to foundation. And we love trees, and we love trees close to the house, and they provide shade, but they damage your roof with their branches, and they damage the foundation because they just leach water out of the soil. And not to mention the roots will go through anything. And so they start moving things because of the strength of the roots. They just will not be deterred. So there are a couple of things you can do. Some people, for example, when they build, they put in a root guard. I have not heard of a root guard that held forever. They generally slow it down because they keep moving. What I suggest again is getting a good structural engineer to tell you what you're dealing with and to provide the solution, and then bid his recommendation, or her. Okay. Even if you don't want to follow exactly what they say, have that recommendation and bid that out anyway. Because when you sell the house, having that professional engineer stamp on the solution that is then executed by a reputable foundation company, and most of them don't have any kind of licenses whatsoever. So you want a recommendation, you want them to be well regarded, you want them to be insured. And you do want them to have a warranty, but here's the thing, most foundation companies are beginning to shorten their warranty, and they're also only warranting the piers that they put in. So if they can't fix your future foundation issues with adjusting the piers they put in, or shims, or whatever it is, maybe if it's a pier and beam, then that warranty is pretty much useless. So until you get to the root cause of the movement, it's best to just understand that warranty, they may find ways to get out of it. Okay.
Okay.
Do you want to expound on that question, or is that pretty good? Because I love your questions anyway.
Well, yeah, that really helped me because I know when I had the slab break, it also broke my my lines, my pipeline to my
Yes.
house. So I had to have those repaired. And I had that happen twice. So I had to have my lines rerouted and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
And let's add this, almost any kind of serious foundation work is gonna jack up your plumbing. So add plumbing repair bills to the foundation repair bills. Just be prepared. You might not have to, but chances are you're gonna have to. Because if you can see a whole house move, say by 4 or 5 inches, the pressure on your piping is going to be pretty major.
Now
It's
you
it
did say something.
hmm?
You did say something about, to try to find out what was causing the slab to break. So
But what's
yeah,
causing the movement? What's
or
causing the
causing the
movement?
movement.
The movement's
Right.
causing the slab to break.
So when you're looking for the movement or what's causing the movement for the slab to break, who would you go to come around and inspect that to see how much movement is going on?
A structural engineer who does a lot of work with soil and foundation. Structural
Okay.
engineers are like doctors. They have all kinds of specialties. So you want someone that knows what they're doing in that particular area and has lots of experience, because it's that experience that's going to really help you, not the fact that they have an engineering degree. And I can speak to how useless newly minted engineers can be, because I was one at one time. They need the experience. And that is why when you get a professional engineer stamp, you have done a lot of engineering type work under people who are more experienced than you. Thank goodness. So, yeah. There's another question. Have you ever seen a home in a neighborhood where the home designs are similar and a contractor may have violated an easement or property line because they did not verify the proper paperwork? Where they have just done work because other homes have similar additions? Yes, all the time. Let's start with that. Let's start with you. Some developer comes in and has this huge area and they're putting up all these houses and they're just like, I'll take a soil sample from this particular lot and I'm going to put the same house on all the different lots that I want to put in, same exact design. But remember, each site is different. You can go from this site to the next site. Think about it. Have you ever, what's the word? When you were kids, when I was a kid, just gone digging somewhere and you dig a long way and it's just dirt. And you go 30 feet over and it's dirt and then clay. And you go a little further, it's dirt and then rock. Well, all of that is going to impact how that foundation behaves. So you want, and again, not a big fan of, just the mass produced these days. Starting about the 90s, they started cutting some corners. So, buyer beware. And just because the designs are similar and one person can do an addition and the other person says, okay, I want to do the same thing, you've got to evaluate your own site. Now, as far as contractor violating an easement or property line, again, happens all the time. Because I want to tell you, this is very important. When you buy a lot and you get a survey, right? And you give the survey to your general contractor to build your house or build whatever. This is really common with retaining walls and fences. The people laying the actual stone and putting up the fence have no idea what's on a survey. So there's a separation between the person who executes the job and the person who's designing the job. That happens. That's why if you sell a property and they redo the survey, or if you just redo the survey on your own, you'll see that for some reason, even though you have a newly built property and you have these very clear property lines, your fence is going to look like this or like this. It happens. And you note it and you try to make sure it's something that's recorded. But if it benefits you, people tend to be happy or quiet about it. And if it doesn't benefit them, they tend to squawk, and then there's bad disputes. So when you convey a house, title insurance, there's just no way to get around that completely. A lot of people buy houses without getting a new survey. I have done it a lot. But if you are concerned, I would get a new survey when you buy a house. Don't accept the existing survey. Go get a new survey. so you can be clear where your properties are. Because, and if you have an old survey, you either have to look at it carefully to see if there are improvements on that lot have been built since the last survey was made, and people will affirm, we have not done any improvements, nothing has been changed. They don't even know what they're talking about. So just, I don't know where I want to go with that. It's, yes, it happens all the time. And the next part, where they may have done work because there's a neighborhood out in Shamir, I don't know if you, I think we've talked about this area. It's out in, I want to say it's in Forney. Have I told you about this neighborhood in Forney I saw, where they had all these, they wanted to get all the lots the same size, but the topography was uneven. So they were adding these retaining walls and moving dirt around. They were moving dirt around. They were moving the actual soil from one lot to another. I was watching it. I told my client, you don't buy here. What are they doing? All I'm saying about that, people do cut corners. Sometimes they don't do it maliciously. They just don't know what's important. And they figure it's okay. And they don't ask. And they don't seek approvals because they figure, oh, that's just the paperwork people and their bean counters, and they just want to have things this way. Well, maybe they do. Maybe they do. But all I'm thinking is, when it comes to property, there's nothing mass produced about them. They're each on individual pieces of land that are very different from place to place. And if you buy a house with this piece of land, let's say that this person decides, instead of getting those, strapling trees, I'm going to move in a big, huge tree because I want to already have a mature tree, which people do. You see them, they sell these trees, somebody's buying them. Well, a newly placed huge tree has an enormous water load. You're either going to see sky-high water bills because you're watering that tree the way it should be, and preferably dedicating dribblers to it, or you're going to see foundation problems and probably roof problems. So once that person gets that house, they treat it differently. Once the same design is built on another lot, it's a whole different product. Once you have a different person working on this project than you do another way, their adherence to the tolerances are going to be different. You never recreate the exact thing twice. And there are neighborhoods where one house, one design is built beautifully on this lot, and they tried to recreate it, and it's just a mess. And it's happening a lot with that newer construction stuff that's less than since 2010. So buyer beware, buyer be educated, buyer have great resources, buyer get knowledgeable people to help, and then still beware. So we are over the time. Is there anybody that has anything else to ask? Thank you for being so interactive with me on Pitranomics. It's really great for me. I love it. I love learning from everybody. I hope we enjoyed having Jet on. He's a young man I think is very knowledgeable. I hope he does more flips because he did a great job. But before we go, does anyone have anything else they want to ask me?
I got one more thing.
Yes, sir.
I love this platform. This was a good one. I hope we have this one again because I still have a lot of questions. And there's also good general knowledge for people who are looking at buying homes or get in a home to know more about before you make a purchase, to know what you're getting into, what the cost is going to be, what to look for. So this was a great platform and I enjoyed it.
You liked this topic?
I love this topic.
Wonderful. I never know what's going to click with people. I just try to share what I think is important and that maybe somebody will get some value from. Also, I don't mind it if you reach out to me and maybe offer some suggestions of things that you want to cover. I just had a conversation a couple of days ago that made me think we need to have one of those spousal Pitranomics. When you go into a marriage, good golly, it's the single most impactful thing in your life, financially, emotionally. But we go into these relationships willy-nilly with no guidelines, no contract, nothing. I mean, don't get me wrong, I did it too. I fell in love with a great man. Oh, I'm going to marry him. He's going to be awesome. I love him. Okay. But if I had to do it again, and I'm not, but if I had to, oh, we're negotiating. We're going to be coming down to what's to be expected and what happens when we don't work out. I just happen to have been really lucky. Not everybody. Nope. It's not lucky. My husband's a saint. I'm a whole lot to put up with. I know it. But he loves me and he's still with me and I love him. However, sometimes it doesn't work out that way. And I think we need to learn how to decide who needs to be in our lifeboat. That's one of the strategies. Get professional help for keeping that relationship going. There's nothing wrong with therapy or seeking maybe some legal advice, maybe some spiritual advice, whatever it is you need to help you get back on track in that, fine. But anybody who's ever been through it, I have friends that witnessed it, it will knock you flat. Hardly anybody I know says, man, that divorce was the best thing financially, spiritually for me. I've just grown so much from it and I'm just happy it happened. Usually you're emotionally bereft, you're financially devastated, and then you've got to rebuild. So that's a topic for me. And maybe do another one with the same for business partners, because man, have I been screwed by bad choice of business partner. Thank you for saying that you enjoyed the platform. I hope that all of us can continue to learn and grow. I reach out to my audience to share what they know as well, because don't be surprised if I come asking you to speak. It's all about sharing and growing together. So I hope you've appreciated it. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you come back next Thursday. Thank you for making this fun. Mwah. I love you guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. And thank you, Christy.